Backrooms was one of the most disappointing movies I've ever had to sit through. It's overrated online and we've all been lied to. Honestly, don't waste your money watching it. I could hear groans at the end from audience members and the movie went down one of the worst directions it could have. I still don't know what the Backrooms is. Most of us internet casuals weren't too invested into the idea of the Backrooms, but before watching the movie we thought we had some idea of what the Backrooms is, right? Like alternate reality, endless rooms and monsters lurking. After watching the movie, I would have hoped to come away with a better understanding than before I came in. Nope. The best explanation we got was the room kind of births its own memory of people or furniture that used to be there. The more something is remembered, the less detail it remembers. The catch is there are scientists who have cameras set up somehow with working power lines and a feed that goes back to them. And at the end, all they say is, "Can you please help us know more?" Like seriously, they don't want to offer any of their understanding of it after having the resources of an ex-MRI company dedicated to researching it. I hate this deliberate washing down of the story just so they can pump out a whole franchise. In my opinion, give the first movie some meat and bones and then see if it deserves a franchise. The character development was abysmal. Really, there are two main characters, Clark and Mary. The store workers, Kat and Bobby, have little dialogue and get killed, so I wanted a deeper understanding of Clark and Mary, but we didn't get it. Yes, Clark has his sob story about being kicked out of his house by his wife, but that doesn't answer this question. What is his motive for searching through the backrooms? He knew there was trouble there, so why did he want to go back so bad? For Mary, it was to save Clark, but for Clark, we didn't get a good enough reason to follow his journey. Later on, when he was deranged, he said he felt like himself there, but honestly, that's too little too late. He was willing to put both of his employees in harm's way, and there was no justification for it. Clark was a failing, miserable businessman, so to me, it would have made sense if they added a sequence of Clark taking back equipment from the backrooms to use for his own store. His greed would have linked with his jealousy of competitors we saw earlier, and just a couple of scenes to link to his rivalry with other furniture stores would have shown us a gradual descent into his madness. Instead, his change is skipped and he goes from sane to insane by the time Mary visits him, which isn't all bad but just feels rushed. I hate it when two unlinked stories are forced upon us. Mary's backstory had almost no relevance or contribution to the overall story. I understand she had a traumatic childhood and is potentially used to dealing with unwell people and being caged up like later on in the movie, and that's fine, but it's still a little irrelevant to dealing with 9-foot tall Captain Clark, who she manages to rock the face off of. Like, come on, I hate when the same monster that picked up one character off of the ground can get defeated by a much smaller human being. It breaks immersion and visualizes the plot armor that is there. For me, making Mary face her own demons like potentially her mother from a traumatic past would have made much more sense rather than fighting off Clark's demons. Some of the audience calling the movie boring is understandable. The Backrooms largely lacks personality, so you would hope that the characters balance some of that out, but they don't. It's very surface level to the point where me saying, oh, so she's a sad therapist, they're 90s potheads who don't care, and he's a failed business owner is sufficient. Give me contrasting traits, give me motives, give me debate in the dialogue, and make me lean into conversations. The movie relies too heavily on its awesome scene building, which I will give it credit for, and the airy VHS ambience it manages to use effectively. But that's not enough for a feature film of this level. I don't just want the backrooms anymore. I want to see the inhabitants of the backrooms, the gradual effect of the backrooms like the lunacy it can afflict, or the natural desire to shield up and protect oneself against the lack of resources like food or water. We don't see any of that, and that's what I mean when I say this movie lacks character. One thing that really pissed me off was the therapy sessions. At first I thought, cool, this is just to set the scene a little, but you're telling me that a crazed maniac who's speaking to a monster and eating these weird human Jaffa cakes is suddenly listening attentively to his therapist while she's tied up by him? I mean, really? All she had to do was shout and say, "You're effed, stay how you are and I can't help you, but let me leave, please." And he just lets her go. Can we know why he even bothered tying her up? Honestly, their dialogue was pretty boring and shallow, and if this was meant to invoke fear or disturb us, it didn't. I like the roleplay aspect, but repeating it twice with almost identical outcomes is boring. Captain Clark walking in did creep me out, but they didn't go far enough with the range of monsters. I wanted several at least, but Captain Clark being the only one is just lazy writing. I feel like they wanted to show off how well they could design the sets, and that looks great for a trailer, sure, but the movie needs substance and a soul. It had neither. Oh, 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 oh. Yo, 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 yo. Yo, yo, yo. This movie disappointed me so much because it felt like a very extended short movie and didn't honor its runtime enough. There are still too many unanswered questions, and whilst you could argue it's up to interpretation, I feel like the whole premise of this movie was to make a canon version of events and explain this internet trend to a general audience. Still, there's so many questions I have unanswered, like why are buildings remembered exactly when people aren't? What do Async gain from studying the backrooms? How did they manage to connect cameras there? Why are they wearing hazmat suits? Why did a portal open specifically in the basement of Clark's shop? Why don't the clouds and trees move in the distance when Clark visits Kat and Bobby at their house? Why was Captain Clark hostile to Bobby and not Clark? And looking online, you realize there's way more unanswered questions, and the answers are all just theories anyway. So we don't have a canon version of events despite having paid for it. I was actually fuming when I saw the dreaded white lab coat. Maybe this is the Stranger Things effect, but I have real fatigue from seeing white lab coats. Like, how many more evil scientists do we have to bear through? They know that these people are stuck, they know exactly where the portal is, and that there are grave threats in the backrooms, but they never go out of their way to rescue anyone. Rather, the rescue happened by chance, so that to me is conclusive evidence that they are in fact evil. And that contributes to the boring take, because we have seen this time and time again. The movie really should have gone off in its own original direction, and I'm not asking for a conclusive theory on why the backrooms is there and how it works, but can we conclude the ending even deeper into the backrooms and find like clusters of people from memories or even other people that are still there, and maybe end on the cliffhanger of near death for one of the main characters, and then potentially add a scene of the camera hanging over and people watching everything as it unfolds. I'm asking for layers of plot. Thicken it just a little at least. I got it that yes, the creepy ambience of the backrooms is unsettling, but that effect faded within 20 to 30 minutes. So I wanted more, and I'm not asking for jump scares, but just more to think about. More dangers, more worries, and maybe I'm alone on this, but I thought when you enter the backrooms, the gate's location changes, and it didn't. But that would have added a heavy layer of claustrophobia, which they did do in some places really well, like Mary running through the tight walls, but give me just that more, man. I thought escaping was one of the major premises of the backrooms, but it turns out that if you have a Sharpie or ink on your shoes, you can walk around the backrooms and find your way back with ease. Like, come on. I will give Chiwetel Ejiofor his flowers. I think his violent outbursts and masking of his inner demons was really well played. You wanted to like him and support him, but he manages to betray your trust and play a madman convincingly. I also praise the set directors and Kane Parsons for doing an amazing job of building the Backrooms world effectively. It met general expectations and the ambience was airy and awkward to be in, so kudos. I do appreciate the fact that this movie is a neighbor to Obsession, so it's difficult to review without comparing. But I'd argue that they are in fact different types of horror movies, so that's the reason why I haven't compared the two. To recap, I wanted more personality, a deeper fleshed out explanation of the backrooms but not a full one, more layers to the plot, more entities, more questions answered but not all of them, and maybe not the same old lab cult pandemic. So a better ending that's not been seen before. I'm happy to be educated in the comments about stuff that I might not know, and I'm happy to have debates with anyone. Give me your opinions in the comments about what I've said, and maybe if it rubs you the wrong way, please don't take it too personally.